part basically. Is the solution part is the tools what we're talking about. Uh, uh, Problems are we all aware. Everybody knows that. From a simple man, we knows that he could be at the peril. Of course, there's some gullible there. Uh, there is a government has also set up. There's something called National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center. Ultimately, what we do, the tools we apply, the software we apply, the hardware we apply, do we have sort of capacity to develop here indigenously, and how much we lacking? Ultimately, there would be a lot of embedded software, there would be a lot of embedded information, even hardware, which ultimately will go into the out of the country. It could be enemy side, it could be overseas, it could be the hackers. General Lamba, for the military perspective, you also use, of course, tools and software and such infrastructure. Do you think we are lacking with such a gap we have in India to address that ultimately the solution? And how are we going about this? How armed forces is going about this national security per se and cyber security per se?
I think you have a very pertinent perspective. You have raised a perspective from a service point of view. And I think what we need to understand is what are the real threats on which we need to work on. Till we understand those threats, I think our whole strategy may even be misplaced, or at least there will be gaps. And I think two things are important for the future. One is, what kind of a threat do we have? China, it's imminent, it's happening right now, and will be huge in hereafter. Second is Pakistan. And when these two collude, the threat is phenomenal. And we have the worst case scenario, which is also already happening, that's North Korea. North Korean, one of the countries attacked by North Korea, the maximum number of times is India. You put this together, and what the systems have detected are that North Korea does not attack systems in India from North Korea. 50% of their agents and their systems are located right here in India, which do the attack. So if we want to see a future perspective, it has to be a system of systems that looks all round 360, and we need to defend ourselves according. So I think as far as the military threat perspective is concerned, I may be slightly digressing, but I don't want to miss this point in the making that today it's a regional threat, and it's a terrible you that you are in a horseshoe that you're trapped in. It's not just physical, but it's equally aggressive as far as the enemy cyber attacks are concerned. Bangladesh, Myanmar, anywhere else, Nepal, please count in a fairly formidable system that will attack India. Second thing, I don't think we've seen the worst of military attacks so far. Solar winds, we saw what it did to the US, penetrated the Pentagon, penetrated their defense mechanisms, penetrated and disrupted their entire systems and files, worked on two things, missiles and nuclear missiles. If that's the level that China could attain, I cannot underplay the threat. The capability exists, it's that they are just not going the way they should against India yet. Remember the 14 characteristic Mao strategy? Lie low, bide time, hit when you're strong. And India is too direct an adversary. And I have seen the border over 6 postings at every rank. This is the next challenge. And I think till we get that in order, how do we ward off the Chinese threat? I think we may be misplaced. Third is 2 points I want to connect.
Please, please.
And I'm correlating them in the Indian perspective. What did we learn from Ukraine? We learned from Ukraine 2 things. Missiles, all the missiles which will be fired were fired. So there might be any amount of protection or aggressive cyber systems attacks you may have. Nothing could stop a missile from anti-tank to a hypersonic to be stopped by any system. So the countermeasures are going on. And the third is narrative warfare. This system, cyber attack, is not just going to be something physical always or military or disruptive. It's going to go into the realms of narration. Is Zelensky really the politician, the actor, the military man, the stand-alone leader who's capable of keeping himself in tense security people and running the show better than any leader in the world. That's because when his broadcasts are shown in the UN, in every other country, and people drawing him in, I think the cyber is, and the social media you mentioned, is something that's really taking the narration to a point of such hyper belief that you will not be able to undo it.
Right.
Even a CEO of a soldier. And my last point I want to make is that, you know, what additional tools do we need? I think we need to train every man. You got an example that they were chasing one man, was the only guy who knew about how to track this person when Mr. Vijay Varghese or somebody gave a mention. Well, that's true even today. Till you have a completely cyber command, I think that's in the making. And if you have something that makes cyber training at the unit level, probably you will be in place. That's the final tool till your man is ready. We used to say you need technology driven brains at the soldier level. Today we need cyber driven protection at the soldier level. Thank you.
Thank you, General Lamba. I mean, thoroughly laid out perspective. Since we are fortunate to have two distinguished ambassadors here, it would be great to get the international perspective. How India coordinates with the global agency around the world, and remember why Denmark is here. Denmark turned around the vulnerability, the challenges, becoming one of the most cybersecure nations is a fact, by the way. I mean, with Ambassador here, of course, good to hear. Ambassador, do you think India has a good international level alliance or talk on such thing? I want to talk about, especially in the EU context, since you are a key part of the European Union. Uh, I want you to tell us the missing link, Ambassador, and what can be done. Especially because this is all about the digital border. I mean, we all know that. You make a call to Copenhagen, and somebody calls here and can be breached upon. Ambassador Freddy to comment.
It would be wrong for me to say that India cannot contribute with anything. I think, however, that the future that we're looking into, and of course my good old friend Ambassador is praising the trust, but trust is good, but I don't believe in it in this context. So therefore we need to develop relationships, strategic relationships with countries who per se will have the same values as we have. So you have to believe in democracy and so forth. And that's the only way forward. And therefore, I think also given the fact that India is going to be not only the biggest economy, at least growth-wise in the coming years, but also technology-wise. When I look into crisscrossing India, what I have been, let's say, seeing across India of startups, smart people, young people, I think if we really want to counter whatever we are being faced with today, we need to work with India. And there's hardly any other country in the world that will have that capacity. The question is, how can you unleash this capacity? Looking back to the COVID, I think you did really marvelous. You broke down silos, and in 100 days or so, you could really unleash competences, capacities, capabilities. Pretty sure that India can do the same. So my answer to your good question, Manish, is of course, yes, India is part of that future. EU, Denmark, and so forth. If you look into the strategy of India and the Indian government, I think there has been a phenomenal reach out from the Indian side towards Europe. We don't have a hidden agenda. We don't want to be a kind of supremacy ruling the world. We have a good, strong strategic relationship with India, and it has to evolve, it has to mature. And when it comes to all these issues of cybersecurity and cybercrime and whatever and whatnot, I think that will be the strongest bridge that could be built in the years ahead. So I will be very optimistic on my own behalf, but also on behalf of India and those of us in the world who believe, trust-wise, of course, in a better future. Dhanyavad.
Thank you, Ambassador. Quickly to Ambassador Mudgal again on the global perspective. Ministry of External Affairs, you have been you have represented for so many years. It's a face of our global outreach and also the way we send message across. We recall the recent incident where the whole infrastructure, the IT infrastructure of our one of the leading institution AIMS was hacked, and the root of hacking was traced back to the China. Do you think, do we have tools or maybe the determination to follow and say to the particular government, look, your agencies, your individual or your, there are culprits down there who are hacking our systems. How your Ministry of External Affairs pursuing this matter and how your mechanism works basically?
Manish, not only particularly this matter. Ambassador, when I said trust, trust means when you share values, it adds to trust. Now, if you don't have shared values, how would you generate trust, right? So we share values, therefore there is a reason for trust. Yes. Manish, in fact, though I would not be able to exactly share those cases because of the reasons which you understand, we have a whole network of bilateral arrangements with our partners for sharing intelligence, for sharing necessary information. Hundreds of internal security threats have been mitigated because somebody in our international partnership told us that there was a threat. Yes. We were sensitized, we were cautioned, we were warned that something is happening, please take action now. There are cases, I'm not able to share with you exact cases, but hundreds of cases. For each one case which you see, a large number of cases are mitigated because of data sharing, because of intelligence sharing. Yes. And when somebody commits a crime, the cyber issue is that the crime is committed in a different land and the criminal is sitting it somewhere else. Now we say apply the law of the land. Now how would you apply the law of the land? Right. He's not against the land, right? Crime has been committed in a different land. Therefore, we in fact have again a network of mutual legal assistance arrangements. In many cases they work, in many cases they don't work. Because the procedures are complicated because we have our own laws and our partners have their own laws, right? Now when we create a case in our law, it has to meet the standard of their law. And sometimes it's not easy to meet that kind of standard. And as a result, you got this example in the earlier conversation that we missed the deadline. And as a result, the local court said, fine, you missed those 90 days. The job is done now. So a lot of those operational